My name is Ida D. Plummer, and I was 31 years old when I finally understood that being useful is not the same thing as being loved. At our family Christmas gift exchange, I handed my younger sister Jacqueline a sealed envelope with $2,400 inside. 3 neat stacks of hundreds, paper-clipped, organized. Enough to cover her rent for the next 3 months. No card, no speech, no sentimental note, just money because I thought the point would be obvious. She opened it lazily, glanced around the room, and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, she tries to compensate for the fact that she's not needed by this family. The laughter came instantly. Real laughter. My father clapped like Jacqueline had just delivered the best punchline of the night. My mother giggled and covered her mouth. Aunt Sharon wheezed into her wine glass. Someone near the tree muttered, savage. I stood there holding an empty coffee mug, watching 2 years of quiet sacrifice turn into entertainment. No one said thank you. No one even pretended the envelope mattered. Jacqueline did not look humbled or embarrassed. She held that money like $2,400 had fallen out of the ceiling and landed in her lap by accident. She was 23, unemployed, allergic to resumes, and somehow still described by my parents as a late bloomer. I called her what she was in my head, a professional dependent with Wi-Fi and excuses. I reached over, slid the envelope from her hand, tucked it into my coat pocket, and said, useful to know. That was all. 3 words. But the room changed. The laughter died so quickly it felt like someone had shut off the power. Plates stopped clinking. My father's smile froze. My mother's eyes widened. Not because she was ashamed, but because she sensed I had just stepped out of the role they needed me to play. Ida, Mom said first, voice soft and warning. Don't do this. It was a joke. Dad leaned back in his chair. Come on. She didn't mean anything by it. Sit down. Eat something. Then came the chorus. Aunt Sharon said, let's not ruin Christmas. Someone else added, you're taking it the wrong way. My mother gave me the look she always used when she wanted me to feel childish for having a boundary. You know how your sister is. Yes, I did. That was the problem. What they did not know was that I had been standing at the edge for months. I had been covering groceries, rent gaps, utilities, late fees, car repairs, and Jacqueline's bounced checks while everyone pretended I was just good with money. Dad's back injury became my electric bill. Mom's career break became my grocery transfer. Jacqueline's bad decisions became my emergency. Not once did anyone ask if I was okay. They just assumed I would keep showing up, keep paying, keep smiling like being drained was a privilege. And while Aaron, my boyfriend, was spending Christmas with his family in Vermont, texting me pictures of snow and hot cider, I was standing in my parents' living room being laughed at for giving too much. So, I told them plainly, this is the last month I'm paying anyone's bills. Starting next month, Jacqueline figures out her own rent. You all figure out your own utilities. I'm done being the family banker. That was when the shouting started. Mom said I was embarrassing Jacqueline. Dad said I was being dramatic. Aunt Sharon said I would regret making Christmas about money. Jacqueline finally looked up from the envelope-shaped absence in her lap and said, wow, overreact much? I did not raise my voice. I did not explain how many times I had paid for things no one remembered. I did not list the overdraft fees, the car insurance, the rent extensions, the grocery money, the silent rescues. I simply put on my coat. Ida, please, Mom said, panic finally cracking through the performance. Listen to us. But I had been listening for years. That was why I was leaving. I walked out and left the door open behind me. No dramatic slam. No final look. Just cold December air and the clean, terrifying realization that something in me had finally snapped all the way through. I thought walking out of the Christmas gift exchange would be the hardest part. It was not. The hardest part was waking up the next morning and realizing I did not feel sorry. My phone was already glowing on the nightstand, packed with missed calls, long texts, and voice notes that looked exhausting before I even opened them. Mom had gone full performance mode. "You embarrassed your sister on Christmas," she wrote. "This family has been through a lot. You have always been the one we could count on. Not one word about the envelope, not one word about Jacqueline mocking me in front of everyone. She skipped straight to the part where my reaction became the crime. I left every message unread. By the second day, the tone changed. Your father wants to talk to you like an adult," Mom wrote. "Don't shut him out." That almost made me laugh. In my family, talk like an adult usually meant I was supposed to sit quietly while they explained why my boundaries were selfish. Still, I went over for dinner because part of me wanted to hear them say it plainly. I wanted to know if even one of them understood what had broken that night. They did not. Jacqueline was exactly as I expected. Hoodie, messy bun, eyes glued to her phone, not a trace of shame on her face. Mom tried to play hostess, setting out plates and asking if I wanted tea like this was Thanksgiving and not a damage control meeting. Dad talked about the weather, then the stock market, which was almost funny considering I had paid their electric bill the past 3 months. I sat at the table, ate 2 bites of dry chicken, and waited for the real reason I had been invited. It came after dinner. Dad leaned back, folded his hands, and started talking about perspective. "Money complicates things," he said. Like money had walked into the house on its own and insulted me. "We're sorry if things got out of hand. If. Not because. If." Mom nodded eagerly. Everyone was emotional. Christmas makes people sensitive. I looked at Jacqueline. She did not even lift her eyes. Then Dad sighed and finally dropped the act. "If you could just help us through February, we should have things sorted. I've got a lead on a job. Your mother is looking into part-time options. Jacqueline is thinking about taking a course. It is just bad timing, that's all." There it was. Not an apology. A pitch. For a second, I felt almost impressed. They had managed to turn my humiliation into another invoice. I set my fork down carefully. This was never about one envelope. Mom's smile stiffened. "Ida." "No," I said. "I need you to hear me. For 2 years I have covered rent, groceries, utilities, car repairs, overdraft fees, late payments, Jacqueline's bounced checks, and every so-called emergency that somehow landed in my lap. And what did I get for it? I got laughed at for helping. I got treated like I was desperate to be useful." Jacqueline finally looked up. "Nobody asked you to." The words were quiet, but they cut cleaner than shouting. I laughed once, short and sharp, because if I did not laugh, I might have thrown the glass in my hand. "That is the most honest thing anyone in this house has said." Dad's face darkened. "Don't twist this. We are your family." "I know," I said. "That's why I let it go on so long." Mom's eyes filled with tears, the fast kind she could summon whenever guilt needed a costume. "So you're just going to abandon us?" "No, I'm giving you 30 days to figure out how to function like adults." Jacqueline scoffed and went back to her phone. Dad muttered that I was overreacting. Mom cried harder. The old version of me would have softened right there. She would have calculated rent, checked her account, sent something just this once, and gone home feeling hollow. But that version of me had walked out on Christmas night and left the door open behind her. I stood, took my house key off my ring, and placed it on the hallway table. Mom stared at it like I had put down a weapon. "Ida, don't be cruel," she whispered. "Cruel would be letting you believe this can continue." I left without saying goodbye. The next week, Mom texted, "Rent is due in 5 days. Please send what you can." I sent $1, caption, "More than I can afford." That was the last time I sent them anything that mattered. For the first few days after I sent that $1 Venmo, the silence felt suspicious. I think they expected me to break first. Maybe they imagined I would call crying, apologize for embarrassing everyone, and send enough money to smooth February over like nothing had happened. That was how it usually worked. I would take the insult. They would wait out my hurt, and then another bill would appear with my name silently attached to it. But this time, I did not come back with a check. I did not even come back with an explanation. What they did not realize was that Aaron and I had been quietly living together since November. Nothing dramatic, no announcement, no grand romantic speech. Just two adults who liked coming home to the same place, splitting groceries, making coffee in the same kitchen, and falling asleep without needing the relationship to perform for anyone. His family did not know much about me beyond a few polite hellos at gatherings. I was just Ida, Aaron's girlfriend, quiet, helpful, easy to overlook. After Christmas, that started changing. Aaron's father called me one afternoon and asked if I could help fix shelving in his garage. I almost said no out of habit, because in my family, help always came with hooks buried under it. But Aaron squeezed my hand and said, "He means shelves. That's all." So I went. His dad and I spent 2 hours in the cold, measuring boards, arguing about screws, and talking about old cars. When we finished, he asked if I wanted to stay for dinner. No guilt, no hidden invoice, just dinner. One dinner became 3. Then Aaron's mother invited me to a New Year's brunch. Then his cousin asked if I was coming to game night. The strangest part was how normal it felt. They asked about my work, my hobbies, the music I listened to in the car. Aaron's mother remembered that I liked banana bread and baked a loaf the next day like it was nothing. I sat at their table with warm bread in my hands and had to blink back tears because no one needed anything from me except my presence. On New Year's Eve, we were sitting around Aaron's parents' fireplace drinking cheap wine when my phone buzzed. "Can you spot me $400 for a new TV? Ours is busted." No hello, no apology, no mention of Christmas, just a request, as if I were still the family ATM with a pulse. I sent $1. Caption, "Should be plenty." She never responded. By the second week of January, the quiet had turned heavier. Then one freezing evening around 8, someone knocked on our apartment door. Aaron was out with his brother, and when I opened it, my father stood there in a windbreaker, face drawn and serious, acting like it was still normal to appear without warning. He stepped past me before I invited him in. I hated that my body moved aside out of old training. "I need to talk to you about something serious," he said. I leaned against the wall and waited. They were 2 months behind on the house. The mortgage company had been calling. A final notice had been taped to the door that morning. They needed $8,000 to get current and stop foreclosure. He said he had been looking for work. He said his disability case was still pending. He said Jacqueline was going through something, but planned to get herself together soon. "Where is Jacqueline right now?" I asked. Dad looked at the floor. "In her room, playing something." "Of course she was." Then he said softer, "Look, I know we haven't always shown it, but we appreciate everything you've done. If we lose the house, it'll break your mother." I did feel sorry. That was the worst part. Somewhere under all the anger, I still pictured the hallway where I learned to tie my shoes, the kitchen where Mom packed my lunches, the bedroom where I used to hide during thunderstorms. But pity was not permission. "I'm sorry," I said, "but I'm not loaning you anything. Not 8,000. Not 800. Not 8. He stared at me like I had answered in a language he did not speak. "So that's it? You're going to let your family drown?" "No," I said. "I'm the one you've been clinging to while refusing to swim. I'm done being the life raft." His face hardened. "I should have known you'd turn your back when things got hard." That sealed it. I opened the door. "You need to leave." The next day, Mom sent a mass text to the family asking for donations to save the house. No accountability. No mention of years of mismanagement. Just unexpected hardship and God bless. 3 days later, Jacqueline texted, claiming she was selling her gaming setup and asking me to cover the rest. I replied with one word: no. That weekend, Aaron's mother pulled me aside at a birthday dinner and said, "We're happy to have you around." I nodded, unable to speak. Later that night, I saw the GoFundMe link for my parents' house. I donated $1 anonymously, and for the first time in years, I felt myself breathe. February came and went without a single real conversation from my family. No apology, no accountability, no honest explanation of how they had let things get that desperate while Jacqueline slept through adulthood like it was an optional class. The GoFundMe stalled at $740. I checked it once, maybe twice, more out of curiosity than concern. The comments were all soft sympathy from people who did not know the full story. Praying for your family. Hope you get through this. Not one person asked why Jacqueline, the fully grown daughter still living under that roof, had not sold her gaming chair, her sneakers, or her 10-year-old sense of entitlement. The house did not go into foreclosure that month, which meant someone stepped in. Maybe an uncle. Maybe Aunt Sharon. Maybe my parents found money tucked behind another excuse. I did not care enough to ask. At least that was what I told myself. But little echoes still found me. One night, while Aaron and I were helping his brother paint a nursery, I got a message from an unknown number. Saw you with Aaron's family. Real cozy over there. Forgot about us already? I stared at it for a long minute, then deleted it. No response. Some hooks only work if you bite. Aaron's family kept pulling me in, slowly and without pressure. I would come over to fix a leaking faucet, and his father would hand me a beer afterward and ask about work. His mother started asking me to bring dishes to potlucks, not because she was testing me, but because she had already placed me somewhere in the rhythm of the house. Aaron's little cousin asked if I could teach him to drive stick shift in the summer. It was subtle, steady, and almost disorienting. They never joked at my expense. They never turned my usefulness into a leash. They just included me. One Sunday afternoon, Aaron's dad called and said they were having a small cookout. "Come help me with the grill," he said, like it was already understood I belonged there. I showed up, and he handed me the tongs like a passing of the torch. Midway through the afternoon, Aaron leaned close and whispered, "You okay?" I looked around at people laughing, eating, asking me normal questions, and realized I meant it when I said, "Yeah." By March, the silence from my own family had hardened into something permanent. Not a war, more like resignation. No more guilt texts from Mom, no new insults from Jacqueline, no surprise visits from Dad. I thought it would feel lonely. It did not. Aaron and I settled into a life that was not flashy, just consistent. He left notes on the fridge, reminders to buy milk with terrible little doodles. We argued at the farmer's market about apples like people whose biggest problem was fruit. I had never known peace could be this ordinary. Aaron's mother was the one who made it hit hardest. She asked me to come early before a cousin's baby shower to help set up chairs. I assumed it was just a practical thing, but then she handed me a list of errands, like I had been part of the family logistics chain for years. I did every task without blinking. After the party, Aaron's father watched me folding tables and said, "You handle yourself well. I've seen people fold under less." He did not say what he knew. He did not need to. The respect in his voice stayed with me all night. The next twist came at a lake house weekend. Aaron's cousin Julia invited us casually, and I went expecting grilled food, card games, and lake water cold enough to punish bad decisions. On Friday night, Julia's husband Brian pulled me aside and said he wanted to talk business. His firm needed a project manager with an IT background. He had heard I was organized, dependable, and in his words, not a jackass. We talked for an hour. By Sunday morning, I had a tentative offer. Less travel, better pay, more flexibility. I sat on the dock staring at the water, feeling like someone had handed me a life I had not applied for. Aaron found me there. "You okay?" he asked. I told him about the offer, and he just smiled. "Told you. They'd like you." The next week, Mom called for the first time in months. No voicemail. Just a missed call, then a text. "Can we talk?" "Nothing bad, just talk." For a second, the old instinct twitched. Smooth it over. Make it easier. Be useful again. I forwarded the text to Aaron. He replied, "Your life is quieter now. Keep it that way." So I did. April started with the kind of peace that made me suspicious. I kept waiting for the next request, the next guilt trip, the next message from a number I did not recognize, pretending to care while reaching for my wallet. But the phone stayed quiet. The inbox stayed clear. The weight I had carried for years, financially, emotionally, spiritually, was gone. I accepted the job Brian had offered me at the lake house. He sent the onboarding documents one morning, like it was the most casual thing in the world to change someone's entire direction. Better pay, less travel, more flexibility. No one treating me like a machine built only to solve other people's problems. Aaron's family found out before I even knew how to announce it. His mother heard it from him, then somehow everyone knew by dinner. His father invited us over, made ribs, and opened a bottle of wine he normally saved for holidays. Halfway through the meal, he raised his glass and said, "To Ida, for knowing when to stay in a fight and when to walk away." Everyone toasted. No jokes at my expense. No awkward little reminders of what I owed. Just people being happy for me because something good had happened. That night, after Aaron and I got home, I saw a missed call from my mother. No voicemail, just her name sitting on my screen at 9:46 p.m., like a door I used to open without thinking. A few days later, she left a message. "Your cousin said you got a new job. I'm glad to hear that. I hope you're happy. We're still here if you want to come back." Come back, as if I had gone on vacation, as if Christmas had not happened, as if years of treating me like a tool with a paycheck could be erased by a 5-second message that did not include the word sorry. I deleted it. The next hit came in May. Jacqueline sent me a screenshot of a flat-screen TV on sale for $399. Under it she wrote, "You could help, you know. $400 isn't a lot to someone like you." No greeting. No apology. Not even a fake "how are you?" I stared at it for a moment, waiting to feel anger. Nothing came. I sent her $1. Caption, "Still too much." She never replied. That was the last time I heard from her. That weekend, Aaron and I went back to the lake house. Just us this time. No plans, no schedule. He brought books. I brought charcoal, meat, and the quiet confidence of someone who no longer had to earn her place by bleeding for it. We grilled, swam, played old card games, and watched the sun fall behind the trees. That night, by the fire, Aaron asked, "Do you miss them?" I thought about it longer than I expected. "I miss who I hoped they were," I said, "but that version of them didn't exist. I was just too close to see it." He nodded, not trying to fix the answer. After he went to bed, I stayed outside by the fire, opened my phone, and scrolled through old messages one last time. Mom asking for rent. Dad asking for mortgage help. Jacqueline asking for a TV. Every thread was a little chain, so I deleted them. Every number, every saved contact, every doorway back into the old role. When I came to bed, Aaron half opened his eyes. "Everything okay?" I kissed his forehead. "Yeah, everything's finally okay." A few months later, something small happened that hit harder than any dramatic apology ever could. Aaron and I were at his parents' house for Sunday lunch, sandwiches, and lemonade in the backyard. His mother disappeared inside, then came back with a small cardboard box. "It's nothing big," she said, "just something we found while cleaning the attic." Inside was an old Polaroid from my first Thanksgiving with them. I was holding a paper plate, stacked with food, mid-bite, looking confused and laughing. Aaron stood beside me, pointing at something out of frame, his eyes squeezed shut from laughing too hard. His mother smiled. "We kept it because that was the day we realized you fit." I had to look away, not because of the picture, but because someone had remembered me in a moment where I was not paying a bill, fixing a problem, or rescuing anyone. I was just there, and that had been enough. The photo sits on our living room shelf now, beside a plant Aaron insists is thriving, even though it looks personally offended by sunlight. Sometimes I look at it and remember the envelope, the laughter, the cold air outside my parents' house. Then I look at the photo and remember something better. The biggest surprise was never revenge. It was being seen, without being needed.